Welcome to Manhwa Recaps, spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. Ja Ongmo says he was one of the people who disappeared during the 99 Days of Revolution. He's one of those called the Vanished. When Earth merged into the mixed world, there was a massive collision. All barriers between the illusions and truths naked the moment when the contents of stories became reality. Which was known as the Mind Unification Day, and many people disappeared without a trace, which again is called the Vanishing. The exact cause remains unknown. One thing was certain, that was those who vanished were sent to another dimension. Sometimes they return, but it's usually as corpses, and some return but as monsters rather than humans. In the future some vanished return perfectly fine, but that's not the case currently. Yuyun says that's kinda crazy to think about, but it makes sense if Doyun's powers and judgment were based on another world's rules. Ja Ongmo then adds in that there's a mother, and she's been searching for him for 10 years now. She's asked to meet Yuyun. Ja Ongmo asks if he would like to meet her. Yuyun says it makes sense she'd want to meet someone who knows her son. He thinks about it, then tells Ja Ongmo he'll meet her himself, saying he'll ask for his help later. Yuyun says that his parents are probably alive too, but he's scared to meet them, since he's not sure where his past self would be, and the old him still may exist here. So he's unsure if he could even see his parents, as they might be afraid of him since he's a teller. They might even call him an imposter. We hear Hiram yelling his name, to snap him out of his thoughts. He's a bit surprised to see her since he was lost, and asks her what she's doing here. She says she followed him since he looked troubled. He apologizes for making her worried, saying that he's fine and that it wasn't a big deal. She says that he does seem fine, then says they should return to the office, but she notices he doesn't want to return yet, asking if he has something to do. He thinks about how since he's decided to be a main character in this life, and how his parents are a big influence for him. So even if they decide to turn him away he won't be scared. He asks her if she'd like to go with him, and she seems excited, asking where they'll be going. He tells her he needs to meet his saviors. On the way there, she tells him he's fascinating. Even though he's a teller he doesn't interact with other tellers, and he seems to have a past that nobody knows about. He tells her she's wrong, but she says she knows he'll tell her one day. She asks him who the saviors are that they'll be meeting, saying they must be special for him to call them as such. He tells her they are indeed incredible people. She's really curious as to who they are now, and about his past that he won't mention. He wonders if she has a family, then realizes he'll find out from reading her book. But he stops himself, and just asks her bluntly if she has a family. She's surprised, asking if he's interested in her. He nervously says if she doesn't want to answer she doesn't have to. But she says she's happy. She looks down, saying that in regards to her family, that she doesn't have any. She did in the past, but she doesn't even remember her father's face, as he ran away when her mother gave birth. She says it's probably what made her mother abuse her so much, she wasn't claimed as her child. And then one day, we see she came back home with bandages, and the door to her mother's room was ajar. She opened it to see her mother hanging, saying there wasn't much left of family after that. Nobody else wanted to hang around. She ended up in an orphanage, and was bullied due to her shy nature, so she has no family. He calls out to her, but she says it's okay now. He shouts her name. Hiram asks him what's wrong. He says it must have been hard for her. She says it's fine, and if it weren't for him, she'd be living like a loser still, and now she knows what she wants to do. He says she seems like she's on the verge of breaking down, and the Sword Empress he knew wasn't like this. But it's not like he knew her in his past life. He says she seems unstable, and that she might break down at any moment. Depending on Hai's actions, he can help change her for the better. He tells her it will be okay, and at the very least he will never abandon or leave her. She gets excited, and says she won't either. The bus gets to its stop, and Yuyun is surprised. He sees familiar places, like his mother's favorite bakery, and the PC cafe he went to a lot. He says it's all the same, as if the only thing that's changed is him. He walks by a playground, saying when he was young he was here a lot, and his mother would always find and yell at him. A young woman passes by him, and he seems to recognize her. We can see that she's a student. She stops in front of him and looks up to see something. A woman yells her name, and we learn her name is Kang Yora. The woman tells her that if she runs from work she'll never succeed. Yora tells her to quit nagging her with so many people around, but Yuyun is stun-locked. The woman stops yelling, and realizes there's people in front of her. She apologizes for being loud, and Yuyun calls her mother. But he realizes she doesn't even recognize him, since he doesn't exist here, and she has a daughter rather than a son. His mother says excuse me, asking if they've met somewhere before. She says he resembles her husband. Yora says she thought the same, asking if he knows her father. Then Yora spots Hiram, and starts to pog out of her gourd, saying that this is the person she was telling her about. She runs up to Hiram, asking if she can get an autograph. Yuyun says it's fate they've met like this, asking his mother if they can talk for a bit. They head into a restaurant. His mother asks for his name, and he tells her his name is Kang Yuyun, and that he's a teller from Celestial Body Incorporated. Yora starts to flip out, and his mother says that he looks so much like her husband, she thought he was a relative. He wants to tell her about his identity, but he can't. Yora says that if he's a teller, then can't he make her into a collector? Mother says that's rude, but Yuyun says it's fine. Yora laughs, saying he said it's okay. Yuyun says in regard to her question, it isn't possible to make a normal person a collector, and he just forms contracts with collectors, he can't make someone one. Mother says that's a relief, she thought he was going to agree. Yora is clearly upset, asking why that's a relief. Mother says that depending on others to reach your goal is wrong, and realizing when something is impossible is also wise. Yora starts to tear up, and runs away. Mother apologizes to Yuyun, and he says she's just at that age. She says Yora has only seen the good side of being a collector, she doesn't consider their struggles. And she shouldn't say it as her mother, but that Yora has no talent. He recalls her saying the same thing to him when he was young, and bites his lip. He asks Hiram to give them space for a moment, and that Yora is at the playground, so go talk to her. She says okay, then walks away. Yuyun says there's no need to give up solely because of a lack of talent. Mother says that she also thinks people should dream big, but she learned that through life you don't achieve things by wishing. Yuyun says it's still her daughter though, and she says yes, and since she's her child she wants to only tell her good things, but not when it comes to a difficult job such as a collector. She doesn't want her to get hurt, and wants her to grow up well. Yuyun says she's not wrong, but that it's her child's dream, not hers. So she can't just dismiss it so easily. She asks him if she should just let him be, and he says no, he's just suggesting she shows her the reality. If she won't give up, there's no helping it. She asks him what he's trying to get at. He sternly says that it would mean she's chosen the path even knowing how hard it would be, asking if she can still think lightly of her child's dreams. A small act of encouragement can change a person. He tells her an honest conversation between the two of them will clear it all up. He tells her he hopes she'll believe in her child's dreams, saying no matter what reality is, people need to dream big. Since heading towards your dreams will allow you to be the main character of your own life. The mother says she's always said the exact words to her daughter, asking how he knows them. He continues, saying no matter how dangerous or challenging it is, if one's goal lies at the end then they shouldn't be stopped. So he hopes she believes in Yora a bit more. She bows her head, saying he's right, and she's overstepped her boundaries as a mother, and is stumping Yora's potential. She says it's weird how she feels like she's talking to her own child while talking to him. He nervously laughs, and the door opens back up. They both look and see that Yora has returned. Yuyun asks his mother if he can talk to Yora alone, and she says yes. He then tells Yora he'd like to discuss some stuff with her. He asks her why she wants to be a collector, and she sniffles, asking if he's going to laugh. She says that collectors' lives seem dazzling and full of pride, and she wants to be like that too, saying it's silly. He tells her not at all, and he has a similar dream. She's surprised. He tells her anyone can dream, what's important is their resolve, and asks if she's willing to risk her life. She seems taken aback, and he explains how Hiram has almost died multiple times to get where she is now. Not just Hiram, but all collectors live like that. He asks Yora if she's willing to do that, but she hesitates to answer. He says he doesn't expect an immediate answer, but she'll have to face this question at some point. She asks if he thinks that she can do it, that if she resolved herself, if she had a chance to become one. He proudly says yes, that she can do it. He says he wishes he heard these words once, then he'd have turned out differently too. He says he can assure her as a teller, that she could succeed. He sees a book above her head, and is surprised, but smiles, saying this is enough encouragement for her. It cuts to later that night. Hiram is thanking them for the day. Yora says that she wanted to spend more time with her, but there's no helping it. Yuyun says it was nice to meet them, and he hopes life goes as they want. He says goodbye, and Yora waves bye, and Mother looks like she has something to say. Back at the bus stop, Hiram says that he seems happy. He asks if that's what it looks like, then asks her what she spoke to Yora about. She blushes, saying it's a secret. Then we hear Mother call out to him, and we see her running over. He tells Hiram to wait a minute. He walks over asking what she needs, and she is panting saying she didn't get to say it before. Then gives him a hug, saying that he's worked hard. He starts to swell up with emotions, saying he needs to cut ties with her. He begins to shake as she hugs him, and he hugs her back saying that he has worked hard. She tells him that she'll be cheering for him and walks away. He seems happy, but is truly thankful for her, hoping she lives her life peacefully. His parents died at the beginning of the end, but not anymore. He won't let them die, nor will he let the end happen. It cuts to Pong flipping out at the news of the party he hired all being murdered. He says there's only one method left, but he says that he cannot do it. We hear a woman asking him what he can't do, and he turns around to see a fairy girl named Argy. He asks her what she's doing here. She says she was wondering if he was doing the work he's been assigned with. But it seems like he isn't. She says she feels disappointed, and she believes in him. He says no, and that he's never failed at carrying out his work before. She says that it's sad that he tried to kill his precious colleague. He says that's absurd, asking why he'd do that. She then asks if that means she is lying to him. She pressures him to make him kneel. He asks how she's doing this. She asks if he's curious about how he's being pressured in his own library. She says when he was contracted to her department, he gave her control over his library, and to get his authority back he needed to become a senior associate. Until he does that he won't have any control over his own library. Meaning he can die here, which is meant to be his safest area. She snaps her finger to release him, saying that she's really kind. And she'll give him another chance to deal with Yoon. This time she'll give him special support with points. He asks what she wants him to do. She tells him she wants a storytelling battle. They'll have their libraries on the line, so what better chance is there? Pong says that it's a battle between the collector's proxy, and with Hiram being under Yoon he doesn't think he can win. She says it's fine, and the department is thinking of sponsoring a good collector. There's one who has been secretly raised, and isn't known to the public yet. While they are new, they can easily deal with a mid-class collector. And if they beat the Sword Empress the Constellations will be happy. Pong thinks this is a great idea. It cuts to some cleaning supplies, and Yoon is taking care of his sword. He engraves a mana circuit on it. A window appears saying the sword will now evolve to the Celio Empire magic engineered sword. And he obtains 100,000 TP since he was the first, and obtains the story of an engraver. This is the sword's true form. He starts reading all of the benefits, and says this shit is insane. He sees the special window is still locked, but that must be because his level is so low. Then he is surprised when he sees that the sword has a giant ego that is dormant. The sword begins to shake in his hand, then floats up yelling that it's free. Please don't turn into a lolly. Yoon then watches as it of course turns into one. She says she doesn't know how long she's been asleep, then asks if he's her master. He says yes, and introduces himself to her, mentioning that he's a teller. She asks him why a teller has a sword, asking if he plans to sell her. He says no, and that he uses the sword. She says that's pretty interesting. He then asks her name. But she says that she's been asleep for so long, she forgot it, then asks for him to give her a name. He asks why, and she says that the fact she woke him up means he's an engraver, so he'll be good at naming. The pure white reminds him of Owl, but it's like he's looking at a white lotus. And he suggests that name, Beck Ryan. Ryan for short. She says not bad and that from now on he is her master. He begins to feel her story flowing into him as the status windows appear mentioning that he is the one who woke her up, and the story of an engraving changes into a title. His story also begins flowing into Ryan. She screams huh, he asks her what's wrong and she says that what's the deal with the reincarnation stuff, asking how he's alive if he's already died once. He awkwardly itches his face, saying it'll be pointless to hide it from her. It cuts to after he's already told her the truth. And she says that she thought he was an unusual teller, but to think his story was like this. Then she asks if his awakening was due to having the knowledge of the future. He says yes, but the one who used her in the future didn't know she was an ego sword. She says he probably only woke her up a bit, however he has the engraver characteristic. That's why he was able to wake her up. She says anyway, to think her master is a teller this is more fun, and she's always been curious about the storytelling a teller does. He says she'll see an annoying amount of that now, and he hopes they get along, they do a handshake, or a form of one. It jumps to later, he asks Hiram if she's ready, she says yes. And then he opens up his library, and the chatters start piling in. He says it's been a while, he says it's just like he mentioned in the announcement. They've been resting, and are back but reorganized in a new way. They ask what he means, and he says he'll show them, so remain patient. He says first, he'll explain the story he'll show them today. As they'll be clearing a mind realm, then we hear Pong yell his name. He turns to see him, and he says that he requests a storytelling battle with him. The constellations seem to be interested in it. Ryan then asks what a storytelling battle is. He says it's exactly as the name suggests. They'll be fighting using stories, and it's not possible for all tellers, it's only used among the celestial body incorporated ones. Then he asks why she's out in front of everyone. She laughs, saying only he can see her. The fight will rely solely on the collector's abilities and the help of the teller. It's a fight that lets the winner takes the loser's library. Ryan says in that case it's a huge deal. Pong asks Yuyun why he isn't answering. He starts to laugh, then says he's not interested. Pong gets mad, and the constellations all said they want one too, but Yuyun says he doesn't want to, nor does he have a reason to accept it. Ryan asks if it's okay to refuse, and he says there's no harm in it. Pong asks if he has no honor as a teller, asking if he's running due to fear. Yuyun asks if an uninvited guest has any say-so on this. And it's obvious what he's planning, since he came to request a battle as soon as he opened his library. He thought if he requested a battle in front of the constellations he'd have no choice, and him trying to use the constellations like this is arrogant. The constellations begin to flame him, and ask what department he's from. Yuyun tells them there's no need to get angry, he probably did it because he doesn't know things that well. Ryan says he's just pretending to show compassion. Yuyun tells the constellations if they keep treating Pong poorly it'll reflect badly on his library, and they are too excited since there haven't been any battles lately. He says that a battle between the Pentagram Department and the newly rising Sword Empress sure seems exciting. But that he has one condition. Pong asks what it is. He says if they are going to fight, they need to put more on the line. And they should put it all on the line. The winner will take everything the loser has, including the right to live or die. Pong nervously sweats, asking if he's serious. Saying Yuyun is trapping himself. Yuyun says it's not a bad offer for Pong either, who laughs like a gremlin, saying okay good. Saying he's the one who suggested it, so he can't take it back now. A window appears, saying officially establishing a storytelling battle. The battle method is a deathmatch. Argy sees this, saying this is quite interesting. She was curious since he's a new teller, but he's much better than she imagined. She says seeing him refusing to conform to his environment, and explicitly ignoring it will be bad for her department if she lets him be. But it'll be fine if they force him to conform to them. Hiram asks him if this is really okay. He says that he's doing it precisely because they'll be fine, and they can show Ryan off. It'll be a great opportunity. She seems worried, and he asks her if she's okay. He tells her she can be honest, and that some of the constellations were questioning his actions, saying he agreed too easily. Ryan says she is on their side. They don't know what the department will pull, and it seems like a one-on-one, but it's versus a whole department, asking what he's thinking. Yuyun asks Hiram if he remembers what he said last time, and the easiest people to deceive aren't those who are smart or dumb, but those who believe they know things, when in reality they don't. He says this is an example of that. Pong thinks he knows everything, and his accomplices must as well. She asks if this was all intentional then. He says yes, and he has a method to beat them. Ryan says that he's a psycho. He thanks her for the compliment, and she says he's actually mental. A notification says there are 5 minutes left until the battle starts. He thanks the owl, and he flies off. Hiram asks if they should go too, saying she wants to see the stadium before she fights. He tells her he has something he wants to ask her. Cuts back to the ugly bastard laughing, saying he's arrogant because he has the Sword Empress. While she is incredibly talented, it'll be difficult for her to win this time. To think the department has someone like him. For the department to lend someone like him, it must mean they also acknowledge his abilities. 1 minute left. Pong tells the guy it's time to go. They both exit their side, and the crowd goes wild, even though it's empty from the top perspective. Pong tells the guy to hurry up and go. He tells Pong not to order him around, saying he was going to regardless. Pong tells himself to endure it so he can defeat Yuyun. He says his opponent is the Sword Empress, and he wonders what her blood tastes like. Certified freak. Pong says she's coming, and says good luck. But both he and Argy are surprised, and the man says what's going on. As instead of Hiram, it's just Yuyun. He stares down his opponent, and the man replies with his own WWE stare. We see a weird constellation saying as expected. It's none other than Satan. He says he always does unpredictable things. and he hopes he fulfills his expectations. The collector asks if a teller is allowed to do this. Pong shakily says there's no rule against it. But he's surprised, saying it's a good chance to kill him. He tells the collector to make sure to kill him. He says he was planning on it, and to stop ordering him around. Ryan asks Yu-Yun if this will be okay, saying the collector is definitely not ordinary. He tells her not to worry, reaching for the book. And he is shocked to read his info. We see his name is Kim Han-jo-ong, but from stories he wonders if he is Jack the Ripper. 1 year from now there will be a collector serial killer, and they are killing other collectors in reality, rather than only the mind realm. Nobody knew who it was, but when the end came he revealed his identity. He lost his life going for Do-eun, and he killed thousands of innocent people before his death. To think the department is raising someone like him, he needs to stop it. In the past Pentagram was active in telling stories and followed the end. They must definitely be related to the end. We see Hiram in the lounge. She is super worried, saying she should have gone out instead of Yu-Yun. It flashbacks to her asking why she can't be the one to go out. He tells her it's his fight and there's no need for her to get swept up in this. She says she's his collector, she needs to fight for him. He says if he were an average teller, yes, and he understands she's worried and anxious. Then thanks her for being worried, but that she needs to believe in him. She's acting like this because she thinks he'll lose. She admits in her head that she is anxious since she doesn't believe. Even though he believes in her, she can't return it. He pats her head, saying not to worry, and he's not as weak as she thinks he is. And he'll show it to her, that she doesn't need to be anxious. He says he'll prove that those who laugh at him are wrong. Flashback ends. She says that she's still nervous, but that she believes in him. The battle begins, and a landscape begins to form around them. It's inside of London. Ryan tells him to look up front, saying that Han-jo-ong has vanished, wondering if he's using stealth. We see him on the rooftop, and Han-jo-ong is wondering how he should kill him. He starts to say his plan, but Yu-Yun turns up making eye contact with him. Han-jo-ong is surprised, and wonders if he got caught, then fades out, saying it had to have been a coincidence. He moves, saying he won't notice him here. But Yu-Yun turns around and stares at him again. Han-jo-ong realizes it's no fluke, asking what the hell is going on since he is seeing through his stealth. Argy asks him what he's doing, saying she thought he was confident in his stealth. Han-jo-ong tells her to shut up, saying he'll do his job. Even if he's been discovered, he just needs to attack into his blind spot. He leaps towards Yu-Yun, saying he can't block this. Yu-Yun turns around, blocking his attack, making him feel fear. He backs up, creating distance, but Yu-Yun follows his movements, as we see he's spotting him by using the book above his head. Ryan asks how he's following his movements, and he tells her he has his ways. She then asks him what his plan is now that he's certain he can see through his stealth. Yu-Yun says if he doesn't go to him, he'll make the first move. Han-jo-ong sees him charging at him, but is frozen like a deer in headlights. He still manages to block Yu-Yun's attack, but asks how the hell he found him. Yu-Yun says it's laughable he is calling that stealth. Han-jo-ong gets pissed, saying he didn't come here with just his stealth. Then vanishes in front of Yu-Yun, appearing behind for another surprise attack. Hiram screams out for Yu-Yun to dodge. Han-jo-ong thinks he's dead and swings at him, but his attack gets sidestepped. Yu-Yun looks down and smirks. Han-jo-ong realizes that he's being toyed with and dashes away again to create distance. Yu-Yun asks him if he's done, saying it's his turn to be on the offense now. It jumps to Owl flying around, and he perches beside some constellations, talking about how Yu-Yun avoided his attack, but another one suggests it was solely due to a skill. Owl starts to relay all of this information to Yu-Yun, who overhears it. He says he wanted to test it since he saw it in Owl's skill book, but that it's pretty impressive. Yu-Yun says that this is what others think about him, and he'll make sure to change their minds. He starts to charge in. Han-jo-ong starts to think about what direction he is going to attack with his sword, and looks over to his right, to narrowly dodge Yu-Yun's spear thrust. Han-jo-ong wonders where his sword went, asking when he changed his weapon. Yu-Yun keeps up his assault. Han-jo-ong wonders what kind of spearmanship this is, when he's meant to be a swordsman. But now he's got a feeling for his spear's range, and how he fights. He realizes he shouldn't have been underestimating him. Yu-Yun leaps in for another hit, and Han-jo-ong says he's dumb for jumping in like this, and he'll die before his spear comes out. But Yu-Yun stabs him in the shoulder, and Han-jo-ong begins to panic. He falls to his knees asking how, saying he was definitely far enough to avoid it. Yu-Yun says he's been trying to avoid his attacks, but he guesses he failed to predict this one. And he realizes that the spear is much longer than it was before. He calls him a cheater. Yu says that's not something he should be saying when he started things off from the high ground, and it's a skill issue. Womp womp. Han tells him to shut up, dashes in saying he needs to be fast enough that he can't react. He gets greeted with a thud to his head, and sees that he just ran into a shield, while Yu smirks. He realizes that he isn't changing weapons, but rather the weapon itself is changing form. Yu goes on the offensive, and Han blocks his 2 rapid attacks. Yu raises his sword back, as Han prepares to block it. Yu changes to a mace, causing him to get pushed to the floor. The Constellations start to wonder where he got his weapon from, and suggest it was from either Eden of Pandemonium. We see Lucifer overhearing them talking about him and Michael. Satan says he definitely knows how to get attention, and it's a shame he rejected him. But wonders if Deep Dark is referring to him. Han looks up from the floor, to see Yu coming straight in. He rolls out of the attack. Pong and Argy ask Han what he's doing. Han tells them both to shut up, saying he's taking care of this. He stands back up, then says that he will compliment him for cornering him this much. But that he's let his guard down too much. He says that he should have ended things when he had the chance. He begins to burst out of his clothes. Argy says he's revealing his traits here, and she didn't expect him to hop on the juice here, but since he is, then it should be over. Han screams, saying he will not go easy anymore. Bro is delusional. He shatters the floor from his leap, then starts to bounce around the buildings above Yu. The Constellations say they can't believe they've not heard of a collector this strong, since he's insanely fast. Han laughs, saying he'd like to see him keep up with his speed, and it's too late to regret this now. Yu asks if he's talking about himself, then grabs him out of his crazy fast dash, throwing him into a building, shattering it. Han starts to spit up vomit. Argy is speechless from this. Yu says that he would have ended things earlier if he knew this shit was so lame. Han asks what's going on, shouting that this was supposed to be a stage, and he was meant to be the main character. He was meant to be nothing more than a sacrifice to make him stand out. Asking how he lost, Yu puts the sword to his throat, saying he didn't try to seek knowledge because he was drunk on power. He let his hubris get ahead of him, and that he needs to take a good look at the person who defeated him, as he is the true main character of this story. Han begs him not to kill him, but Yu says this is his power, and he shouldn't be looked down on anymore, cutting his head off. Pong and the Constellations are shocked as he was completely merciless. Yu sheathes his sword into literally nothing, and is declared the winner. The Constellations begin to clap, and a window says he'll be rewarded shortly. Yu begins to laugh, and looks happy. Hiram is also really happy that he won, says that he actually did it. She bites her lip since she didn't believe him even in the end. But she says that she believes in him now, and that she will never doubt him again. As he is her light. It cuts to Michael watching it all, saying now he knows why the others are so interested in him. He did such a thing when there were so many people around. He's sure the other groups will try to push harder to get him. And he'll be expecting more from him. In Pong's waiting room, he is being choked by an aura, while Argy yells at him. She says that their investment just got bodied, by a newbie teller at that. Pong says that shouldn't have been possible, and someone must be behind him. She shouts, asking if he truly thinks that would excuse him, asking if things would change if Yu was receiving donations from other departments. There isn't a way to fix this situation, and they are already past the point of no return. She says they need to find the one responsible, the one who caused all of this. He begs for her to forgive him. She says that he lost their secret weapon. He also failed the mission, so what use does he have? He tries to say he has more to offer, and she says that what he lost isn't something that can be quantified as a simple monetary loss. He won't be able to pay it off even if he worked his entire life. He says there's no way he's worth so little, and she says his panic is unsightly. He's lost all right to the library now too. Argy says that doing just this is already her being benevolent since he's her junior. He should be living a life worse than a slave, asking him if that's right. He wonders when it went wrong, and says that he got played by Yu, and he knew it all from the start. He wasn't the hunter he believed himself to be. He begins to be choked out, and Argy turns to see Yu entering the room. She says how delightful to meet him and introduces herself. He does the same. She says she watched his fight, saying he's amazing. He says he doesn't know how to respond to her praise, but asks her where Pong is. She says it's sad to say, but he no longer exists, seemed as if he was destined to die from the start. Yu says that's strange, as he was meant to have the right to his life, and he didn't tell him to die. She says he must not be aware since it was his first battle, but that's just how it is. He laughs, then asks her if she's done spouting bullshit. She asks if she heard correctly what he just said. He says clearly not, and to stop yapping. Asking why she's removing others' possessions as she pleases, asking if that is normal in the department. She says even if she did kill him, she is a higher rank, so he should show respect. He tells her yes, she's superior, but that doesn't excuse her mistake, and it's an abuse of power. She says that it seems like she made a huge mistake. She says she'll compensate him accordingly. She gives him 800 points, saying that should be enough. We finally get some lore on this fairy, pixie whatever. He says he knows of her, and she's a psychopath who laughs at others dying, and he remembers her clearly. The sight of her gathering all of the people that refused the trial, and then murdering them all, while just laughing and enjoying it. She looked down on everyone as if they were lower than even bugs. She says the point seemed to be about the worth of Pong. He must have had a hard time having to take care of such a junior. She laughs, saying he knows how to appreciate her, but she's fine since she's benevolent. He then asks if she's heard that there's word saying that some department is in contact with the Exodus. The Exodus is one of the forces in charge of the mixed world. They exalt in the despair and anguish of the lower worlds. The department in contact with them is Pentagram. The other group in charge of Earth's society gave up the storytelling rights to them, making other departments shut down. But Pentagram continued storytelling as if nothing was happening. Argy asks why he's saying this, saying someone might mistake her with having connections with the Exodus. He says he was just telling her so she can be careful if they approach her. He says he'll be going now since he has to claim Pong's library. She cheerily says bye and she'll see him later. But instantly looks pissed. Yuyun says she's definitely different from Pong, who is easy to deal with. She knows how to hide her feelings and will do anything to hide information about the department. Just the fact that they have a connection to Exodus says a lot that they aren't easy to deal with. Just like how they raised Han Zhuang and nobody knew says it all. They'll be hard to deal with alone. However, things aren't the same now, as we see he has a book in his hand. It cuts to Shiryun's, who says she wished he gave her a heads up. Asking if he knew how she felt when she heard her teller and collector went to a mid-realm to make money, but ended up in a rap battle. They both apologize, and she says she'll stop nagging since they seem sincere. Then ask if they got anything good to tell her. Hiram says that Yuyun was amazing. He says the capacity of the library was doubled since it merged with Pong's. But says she seems happy, asking if something good happened. She says she didn't want to say anything, but she wonders how he noticed so quickly. She says more stuff, and he says he didn't say any of that. She says that today is her payday. Hiram asks what she means. Shiryun shows them how much they've made this month and it's already been taxed. Hiram looks at her phone to see how much it is, and is flushed at what she sees. She asks Yuyun what to do now that she is hella rich. He says he's jealous that she's excited over so little money. Shiryun says on top of that, due to Hiram becoming famous, they've been getting a lot of commercial requests and interviews, and they signed a fatty contract. Hiram starts pogging out. And they both start to do a little happy dance and talk about money. Ryan, Yuyun and even Owl are completely dejected. Ryan asks why they are acting like that. He says it's because they both grew up really poor. But then he smiles, saying anyway. The Baekwa management is now full of life. He makes a suggestion for food, and they both say that's for rich people. He tells them their ambitions are too low. It jumps to later with Shiryun flipping through her papers. Yuyun says that she must be busy due to all of Hiram's advertisement offers. But he should get to work too. He gets a notification from Celestial Body Incorporated, and he says he didn't see it due to the battle. But he's been promoted due to earning the points for both merit and TP. He is surprised, saying he's been acknowledged for his work. He wonders if he's a senior associate now, but sees that he must attend a promotion ceremony and will be a probationary senior associate. He says he needs to visit headquarters soon, and the problem is the promotion ceremony will take some time. Well, it's his fault for growing too fast. Hiram asks what he's thinking about so hard, and he says it's his promotion. She congratulates him, and so does Shiryun. He thanks her, asking how her work is. She says she's done most of it, and talks about how much work she has to do. Yuyun caught a stray. He says it must be quite difficult for Shiryun, and she says it's fine since Hiram needs to meet the business people now. He says since they are talking about it, they should start now, and asks her if she has time. She says she does, and he says they should go on a date. She drops her pencil, and she screams. It jumps to later, and Shuryun asks him why he needs to say stuff like that with Hiram around. He says he enjoys teasing her, and it seems like he hit a home run since she was screaming and crying asking why he didn't say that to her. He quickly asks Shuryun if she's been struggling to find a company to handle the byproducts. She asks how he knew. He says they've been growing quickly, but it must be tough for an unknown company to make contracts with others. She says she can't deny it, but in more time. He cuts her off, saying it'll be too late by then, and they need to sign a contract as soon as possible. He says he wanted to come out with her to help her. If a teller shows up in person, they'll have a hard time looking down on her. She thanks him, and says there's a problem with the company she's been considering. Asking if he will listen to her for a bit, it cuts to her with a cup of tea saying her family was affluent and peaceful. She grew up with her father, and didn't have her mother, but it was fine. Her older brother was a collector people called a rising star, and was popular. But one day he died in an accident, but the real problem is what happened afterward. There were several collectors that died or were injured, and were from big clans, and they sued her brother, saying it was all his fault, but he was dead and the court ruled in favor of the big clans. That's how she ended up with a fat-ass debt. Yuyun says the court is too easily influenced. She says her brother was a good person, and was more just and kind than anyone, and he treasured his family. Unlike other collectors, he believed that society was going backward. He goes to ask her something, but she answers it saying that he thought the mind realms shouldn't be maintained. He says he sees, and that the big clans wanted to maintain them, which must be another reason they must have sued her family. But he doesn't think her brother's death was a mere accident. He should look into it. We hear someone that recognizes Shuryun, and we see a businessman saying it's good to see her. He says after she quit the clan he was sad, and he's heard about her agency, and asks if she can even make money. Yuyun asks who the pig is, and she says it's her senior from a previous workplace. He asks who the thin guy across from her is, asking if he's a collector. He and his group start to laugh, saying that they are surprised her business is still afloat, asking what tricks she used. They ask if it's a contract-related meeting, and even take shots at Suyun asking if she can even care for a collector. Yuyun calls out to Porkchop, and he says he forgot to introduce himself, saying he's part of the Hanwha clan. Yuyun tells him his name, and Porkchop says he's not heard of him, asking what his rank is. He says that's enough oinking, asking if he can leave. He gets angry, asking what right he has to tell him to leave, asking if it's all he has to say. Yuyun says no, and he wants to beat his ass, but he's holding back because of Shuryun, but he doesn't like the way he's talking. Suhirun tells him to stop, and Porkchop asks how dare a no-name collector threaten him, asking if he knows who his clan is. Yuyun tells Suhirun that when he insults her, it's the same as if he insulted her. Porkchop laughs saying he understands their relationship now, and he thought she got through with abilities, but it turns out she just seduced him. He says he wished she got with him when she was part of the company. And then he too could have had some fun with her. Yuyun yells at him, then hits him with a right straight to his ugly bastard face, causing him to fall to the floor. The others ask if he's crazy, asking how dare a collector hit a citizen, asking if he'll be able to handle the aftermath. They start to call the special unit, but he says it'd be useless even if they did, since he isn't a collector in the first place. Porkchop sits up confused, and Yuyun asks how they will punish a teller by using collector laws. Porkchop begins to stutter since he got cooked, and Yuyun tells him to keep talking like he was earlier. They begin to surround him, saying even if he's a teller this is too much, if he doesn't stop they won't stand still. He smirks, saying to go ahead and take your weapons out, because he'll just kill them all right here, and if they don't want to die they can get the hell out. They all run, while Porkchop waddles. Suhirun calls out to him, and he asks what she thinks, saying he's trustworthy, right? She sighs out of relief, saying she can't stop him. They sit back down, and she asks why he chose her. Poor waiter having to clean it up, he says tellers can see others' abilities. She says that she was blacklisted by the other big clans. He bluntly asks if she resents her brother. She says she hated him at first, but she realized he wasn't a bad person. He just worked hard and unintentionally bothered those higher up. He asks if she'll accept the injustice that's been placed on her, and she asks what she's meant to do against those people. He says that's what he's here for. And they should screw over this damned world, raise chaos and prove they aren't wrong. It might sound absurd now, but she'll change her mind. Then says they should go find a company to deal with the byproducts. He stretches his hand out to her, saying he'll help her. She looks really happy and smiles, then grabs his hand saying he might regret it. He says he's the type to act first, then regret after. She says he always has some comeback. If you've watched till the end, comment, Valheim, to let me know. Subscribe for more videos like this, leave a like or a comment to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.